This is The Water Table.
A chance to hear the agricultural side of these issues.
A place for people to go find information and education.
Water management is just going to become even more critical into the future.
How misunderstood what we do is.
I would encourage people to open their minds and listen to this dialogue.
This week, we're taking the Water Table podcast on the road to Melbourne, Iowa. We will be visiting the Iowa Leica Farm and the Iowa Leica Field Day. Join us as we interview some great guests. Well, welcome to the Water Table podcast. Today I have Bruce Barnhart with me from Iowa Leica, and we're going to talk with Bruce. And we are out here on location today. It's kind of fun for the Water Table to be on location in Melbourne, Iowa at the Iowa Leica Farm, a place I've actually never been during the summer field day, but I've been down here and taken a tour before. So I want to talk to Bruce just a little bit about his career and who he is, and then talk about Leica, both at a national level and state level. So welcome to the podcast, Bruce.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your Barnhart Construction, your business, and when did you start, and how did that all get to where it is today?
Well, I guess I got in the earth moving business by accident. When I was young, in my early 20s, was the middle of the farm crisis. At that time, I probably assumed I'd be a farmer my whole life, but that was not meant to be. My parents managed to save their farm, but they had to make some adjustments, and one of that was renting it out. And
Sure.
Dad went to town and got a job, and I started out raising hogs with a neighbor, and he had a bulldozer and wanted me to lease it and start doing jobs and paying him, a percentage, and that's how we got started. And we did almost exclusively farm work for quite a few years. We did custom farming also, but gradually got more and more into the earthwork and out of the other enterprises, and now we're exclusively earthwork, and that includes snow removal, demolition, some heavy hauling. But that's how we got to what we are now, and we're very diversified. As I said, we still do a lot of farm work, but we do home sites, subdivisions, we do commercial demolition, commercial sites, and so we found that by being diverse, we can keep busy all the time.
Yeah, you're a busy guy. What year did you start kind of in the business?
Well, we say I officially started in '82. That's
Okay.
when we started in the earthwork part. I had been doing some custom farming in conjunction with working with my dad and a job during college, but officially we say '82. So
Yeah.
now that's been 41 years ago.
Yeah. Well, good for you. That's something to be proud of, and a lot of stuff when you say earthwork, a lot of your business along the way, and I think still is in conservation. And
Oh yeah,
conservation work.
When we started out, that was our bread and butter work, and still it probably is 45%, I would guess. I mean, and that's our favorite work, actually.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that question. You're diversified into so many different things, and what are you really passionate about when it comes to the work? And kind of just answered that, but why would you say that is? What do you like about doing conservation projects?
I'm a farm kid, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I like to say I've been controlling the water since my brother and I drained mud puddles in the driveway when we were 5 and 6 years old.
Yeah.
So at that rate, I bet I got 55 years experience.
Yeah.
But the thing I like is being close to ag. Several of our customers I've had for 45 years when you count the custom farming before. A lot of them were second generation. Some of them we're working with the third generation now.
Sure.
So the continuity and just the good rural attitude of the customers is what I like.
Yeah, and you can see some of the results of what you do. You can probably see that everywhere, but
I'm very proud. Any direction of town I can drive and see projects we've done.
Yeah, which is neat to be able to do that. It's neat to be able to do that. How about as you've gone along now, you have any family in the business, or what are you doing with that?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I have a son-in-law who's been with us for 10 years now. He's very integral to the operation. I have a son who's younger, and he just graduated from college a year ago, but I like to say he's 23 years old and's got 15 years experience.
Yeah,
because
sure.
he's been with me since
Yep.
he was not very tall on the
yeah.
job sites.
You learn a lot by listening to Dad talk on the phone at night or driving
Yeah.
down the road, and
Well,
you
all
don't need to-
my girls, which are older, they're in sales, and they've made the comment, we used to hate it when we had to sit in the truck when you talked with customers, but it gave us,
Yeah.
now that we're in sales, it
Yeah.
gave us a whole different perception on how to talk to people.
Yeah, it reminds me of my kids had a song when we'd be in the car. They would kind of start singing a song quietly to themselves about Dad's on the phone, be quiet, and I can't remember how it went beyond that, but it's something that it's why they call it a family business.
You
right?
betcha.
So,
that's exactly right.
yeah, it takes everybody to sacrifice something.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the Leica farm here, and you're past president of Iowa Leica and National Leica, which thank you for your service. And
You bet.
how long did you do that?
Well, if I don't even know for sure what year I joined Iowa Leica, but it was probably in the mid '80s. So I've really close to 40 years involved in the organization, and there for about 20 years I was very involved. Iowa district, VP, president, and then in the national organization, the regional VP for 4 years, and then state and national president. I think I finished up my term as national president in 2009.
Okay.
But that was it was good experience for me, and it turned out, this is what people can't comprehend, it was good for my employees, because I didn't think I could be gone much, and you start out little, traveling a day or two throughout the state, and you give people more responsibility and they accept it, and then pretty soon it's a week, and then you're gone more, but things still manage to get done, and makes you realize that to be successful you have to delegate, and
Delegate.
the only
and
way to
elevate.
delegate is to give them responsibility.
Yep, that's right. And sometimes that's so hard to do if you don't have to. You know what I
Right.
mean? You have to.
And I
'cause
think
it-
that's the point. It forced me into doing it.
Yeah.
And when I didn't think I had time, and it just got easier to do. And
Yeah, and then it
Here we
allows
are.
you not being, right there in the business every day to kind of see things from a different angle and be able to.
And the things I've learned traveling the country have been invaluable in my business. I am absolutely certain that whatever you would say I put into Leica, I got more out of it than I put in it. And the more I put in, the more I get out. And that's still true today.
Yeah, that's.
I had friends in New Jersey, and this was years ago, and there's this new practice of storm sewers. I can't even think of what they called it, but about 3 years later, there's this new product in Iowa, and nobody had ever heard of it. I go, well, they've been using that in New Jersey for 3 or 5 years, and I knew what it was. And we have local issues about NRCS practices or whatever, and to be able to make a call to the state engineer and he knows you and talk and many times get something resolved quickly. That's invaluable.
Yeah, awesome. And you were, and he's talking about the farm here, you were really involved. I don't know if you were president when they bought the farm, the land here.
No, that would have been after my state presidency, but I was involved. I mean, there's a lot of people that can take credit for it, but probably the driving force was Doug Egland. And, but it's not just him. And I don't want to start mentioning a bunch of names because I'll forget some, but this was a group effort, and it started out, would do field days and all over the state, and we decided if we could get a central location and just do field days in a central location, that made sense to us. Several reasons. We could have dedicated gravel roads for parking, so if it rained, we could get cars in and out. And so that's what we started doing, and then every year we did a project here to make it better. And eventually we realized that this wasn't just a place to have field days, that this is in essence a conservation showplace.
Yep.
And so then we decided we wanted to build and maintain about every conservation practice that used in agriculture.
Yeah.
So we started doing that. I mean, and this is just a partial list. I wrote them down in case I wouldn't forget them. But we've got waterways, tile inlet terraces, bioreactor, saturated buffer, pond, crepland, just regular tile, septic system, rain garden, water and control basin, water control structures on tile, buffer strips.
Yeah.
I mean, and just to show people that don't understand what they're looking at, it's just good to have this resource.
Yeah. There's so many ways that we, as a society, can handle water and can treat water before it gets to a river and stream, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in our own lawn or a commercial development. And it's pretty neat for you guys and for Iowa Leica to kind of lead that with all of those practices you just mentioned here on the farm, because, you know, you might say, well, you put in a rain garden and hypothetical now what I'm saying, but, you know, that would help, you know, 3% or 5% of, as far as the water quality that comes out of that. But when you add these practices together, and some are much better than others, of course, but when you add these practices together, you can do a lot for the water quality of what comes out of an outlet.
Absolutely. Now, this drainage area coming down through here is roughly 1,000 acres, and other than the very south side of the parking lot, every drop of water that comes through here is run through or controlled or cleansed or detained in some manner.
Yeah.
And you know, Iowa State's done some sampling and you know, analysis, and you know, we want to be part of trying to develop the expose people to the current generation of practices, and also develop the next generation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's opportunities. I know this week out here, or during the 2023 summer, they're doing a batch and build process out here.
Yes, they're having a seminar on how, you know, about saturated buffers mainly, or maybe somewhat bioreactors, but mainly saturated buffers. They're talking about how to do it, and so our members understand the concept of why they have to be bundled and bid out in bigger quantities to get to, you know, some economies of scale.
Yeah, and it's something that, you know, saturated buffers have been around for a while now, but we continue to learn, you know, just like you said, continue to learn more every year or every few years around, you know, why should we tweak it, or why should we do it this way? And it's for the greater good, right?
Right. Well, at the rate it started, you know, I don't remember the statistics, but, you know, a few dozen are put in the state every year. To get to a meaningful threshold, we need to do hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get that way by putting them in one at a time. You get get them on the ground by bidding them in 40, 50, 100 unit increments.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one thing that's really exciting for me about our industry is we've been talking about water quality ever since I've been in the industry, since '97, and you know, and for a while it was pretty frustrating and seemed like things were so slow, but it's like anything else with the bell curve, is we're right at the beginning of that, where this is really going to change, and we know that because we can see it now. We can see the difference from 2023 to maybe 2020 or 2019, and how many of these processes are happening, you know, and turnkey type processes in some states. So.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it takes a while to ramp up the capacity, and not just engineering, but also financing and the contractors to do the work.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you there for, you know, the nitrate reduction strategy started right here in Iowa.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on the forefront.
Yeah.
And it just, I mean, I was a little disillusioned that it didn't seem like we were making the progress that we had hoped to. But I think now it's just like a train. It just starts slow, and then once you get up to speed, you got the weight of the train pushing you almost. And I think if we're not there, we're close to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on the Cedar County Board of Supervisors, and we're very supportive of the Lower Cedar watershed, and we're getting some batch and build program up and running there, which is exciting to me. I mean, back when I started, we talked about soil erosion.
Yeah.
That was the big thing.
Yeah.
You know, back in the 80s, 85 Farm Bill, it was all about soil erosion. Well, turns out soil erosion, water quality, and water quantity all can be pretty much solved by the same group of practices.
Yep. Yeah. And that leads me to the group of practices. We have a lot of that done on this farm now. There isn't many more practices to try to add here. So what's
Right.
next? What is Iowa like, or what should they be thinking about if they aren't? From your
Well,
perspective?
I'm not currently sitting on the board, so I hesitate to say
Yeah.
what they should do, but I can tell you that at just the membership meeting today, we talked about adding on to this facility to have an air-conditioned classroom area.
Yeah.
NRCS has come out here to train their staff. IDALS has come out here to train staff.
Yeah.
We've had school groups of people that maybe have, from Des Moines, possibly never been on a farm.
Yeah.
So I think the next evolution is to develop better facilities to be able to tell our story. And I don't mean just Leica, I mean the conservation industry story.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And is there any talk or any thoughts that this should be done in another location too in Iowa? Just start another farm, start from scratch
Well,
again?
we've had those talks. That's a tough one because we have so much invested here. I mean, and it's obviously worth a lot more than we gave for it. But
Yeah.
I think there's still some practices we can do or do multiple units of, but a possibility would be buying some adjoining ground as it came up for sale, or making a deal with the adjoining neighbors to do some practices on their ground. That way we can utilize this core where we've got gravel roads for the parking. We've got a building to have vendors display their wares in. We've got permanent restrooms.
Sure.
And then when you put if this gets ever comes to fruition, get the air conditioned and the heated classroom,
Sure.
then it can just be more of an educational showplace.
Yeah, you forget about all the infrastructure you have in place here over time. And the one question I didn't ask there is, what year did the Leica purchase this property?
We purchased it in 2003,
Okay.
and so our first field day, I believe, was in 2004.
Yeah.
And the first field day was grading this parking lot. Back then, we parked on the other side, and this was our project, grading this parking lot in conjunction with some other conservation work. But
Yeah.
we did it in 2003, like I said, and then the building was put up in 2009. So those are the pretty significant milestones to this
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to what can happen with a shared vision. The shared vision of, like you said, there's a lot of people that should get some credit for this, and Doug
Well-
Egelin being one,
Well,
but a lot of other people. But the shared vision of people, somebody sharing it, and people getting on board and understanding it, and seeing we're 19 years later, it's pretty neat what you can say you've accomplished
Well,
here.
and somebody I really want to give credit to is our associate members, and by that I mean the heavy iron guys, the Altorfers, the Zieglers, the Martins, the RMSs that are Case. And then there I went down a path I shouldn't have went because I'll forget somebody.
There's others.
But our vendors have provided the equipment to do this work.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, it's a win-win deal.
Yeah.
They get to expose their products to a bigger group of people at one setting. So they've been thankful to do it. But as everything gets more expensive, there is a cost, and we absolutely couldn't have done this without the support of our vendors.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that, but the other side of that too is the opposite of what you're saying is the general public, and that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing on the water tables. The general public, you talked about this when you started a little bit, doesn't really understand what happens on the farm, or how water gets from one place to another, and how we can solve a lot of that on the farm. And we're learning every day, but we're also investing and I think that's where there's a pretty big disconnect, is a lot of times our city cousins look at things and say, the farmers they don't care about the land. Well, just look at this place, and I don't know how you can argue with that. The amount of time, the amount of money, but but more than money, just because you could be working today and making money for yourself, and the amount of time and energy and focus that you're taking away from what you could be doing to put it here because it's the right thing to do and because you're giving back to the land and giving back to the general public is pretty impressive. And I hope that, you know, long term, that's part of what the Water Table podcast can do, is connect to the city people, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, I listened to this one about Iowa Like a Farm and I want to go down there, or I want to listen to more podcasts and hear what Matt Helmers has to say. Or
well, and all your points are absolutely spot on. As our society becomes more urbanized, and that's a definite trend, there's no doubt about it. Our congressional districts change to reflect that. Ag is a minority, and there's a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes about ag that are absolutely wrong. And one of them is that farmers don't care about their land.
Yeah.
That's their legacy.
Yeah.
It's their business. It is everything to them. Now, I'm going to say there's some farmers do a lot better job and more proactive than others. But as a rule, farmers are the best conservationists I know.
Mm-hmm.
They're always willing to try new things, and they're always willing to do something to try to make their farm better. And now we're in a societal change. It's not just making their farm better. It's their part in making water quality better for everybody.
Yeah.
And they are willing participants.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they see the bigger picture. So
Yes.
I appreciate this conversation. What do you want our listeners to know about you? Or it don't sound like a guy that really wants to talk too much about himself, which is just fine. But what do you want them to know about what goes on here and in our industry?
Well, I would just like people to realize that the state of Iowa, the USDA nationally, water quality is a buzzword. It's a hot topic. There's a lot of money getting dumped into those things. Us as contractors, there's a step in between that we have to have people to engineer these practices. We've got to have suppliers to sell the product. I mean, it's kind of it's a subset of an old industry, drainage.
Yep.
But there's just new opportunities. I want people to realize that we are embracing them. We're ramping up as fast as we probably can, and I think that we're starting to see results.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the results aren't what we think. And I mean, a thing of mine is, as we control more erosion on farm fields, there's hungry water syndrome, where the rivers are scouring more, and they're picking up, they're craving silt. So as we address one thing, it causes another thing, the law of unintended consequences. So we need to also widen our focus. Stream bank restoration, stream bank stabilization needs to be factored into this now.
Yep.
It's a very complex ecosystem.
And we maybe had certain things figured out 20 years ago. Well, we don't. I won't get into climate change because that's just a road that doesn't get to the point. The point is the weather patterns are changing and are different than they were 20 years ago. We have, longer drier periods and longer wetter periods. The last several years in Minnesota, we've had really cold, wet springs and then pretty dry, hot summers. And last night in Minnesota, we got 4 inches of rain in not a very long period of time.
Right. Our rain's becoming more in the summertime, more in bigger events.
Yep.
And climate has been changing since the world was developed.
Sure.
And when I was in my early teens, they were taught, the experts were predicting a global cooling and a coming ice age.
Yeah.
Now, I'm 63 years old, so 50 years later, we're in the exact opposite scenario of what the experts were telling us was going to happen 50 years ago. So the climate's always changing.
But we can't decide, and that's my point, is we can't decide today that we know the practices we have to do into the future, because 20 years from now the climate's going to be changing again.
Exactly, and there will be new technology. That's the thing. a lot of what we're doing, the technology didn't even exist 30
Right.
years ago to do some of the things we're doing. The understanding of nitrates and wood chips and
Yep.
in vegetation taking up absorbing the nitrates. I mean, science is developed enough to give us a whole new bunch of work to do.
Yep. Yep. Well, Bruce, I appreciate all your knowledge and you being willing to visit with me here on the water table on site at the Iowa Leica farm.
With the
And
95-degree Leica farm.
I appreciate everything but that. That part when I saw last week, I was like, dang, it's going to be hot. But
Yeah, you bet.
We'll deal with it.
All right.
So thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode. I have so much fun recording these. I hope you have as much fun listening as I do recording. These episodes are available on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. So find them and download them when you can. Thanks for joining us.